Terry Spahr. You're listening to The Jan Price Show, and today my guest is executive producer Terry Spahr, and we're going to be talking about his brand new documentary, 8 Billion Angels. Welcome to the show, Terry.
Thanks, Jan.
I can't wait to talk to you about this film. It's a very interesting film. First, just so our audience knows a little bit, because it is a controversial subject, and I kind of think, we'll get into why it is controversial, but let's have our listening audience know, so they know a little bit about what we're talking about. Can you give us a brief synopsis of what the documentary is all about?
I'll give you a super brief synopsis. The film essentially exposes the viewer to the fact that our world's, water, food, pollution, energy, climate, and extinction emergencies are a consequence of our unsustainable population growth. That's sort of a very short synopsis.
And a good one. There's so much to talk about. First of all, this is a beautifully photographed film. The cinematography, the way it's laid out is so perfect and right on. I mean, I loved how you just each thing, starting with the ocean and why we should be concerned about that, and just going, land, and just going through all of it. I have to tell you, when I was watching it, I was going, oh my God, it just feels like all of these issues are so insurmountable. And how do we solve the problems that are going on with climate change, but everything that's going on in our world and on our planet? And if we continue to do what we're doing now and don't make the changes, I just don't see how the planet will be able to survive. And that's kind of at first when I'm watching this film thinking that. And then I love, obviously you give solutions at the end of this film. In the process of making this film, how did you choose the experts that you interviewed, and how did you decide how you were going to plot this film out?
That's a wonderful question, because it's such a massive and complex and interconnected systemic problem that we face globally. And it's just not an easy subject to distill down into an hour plus of a film, and to make it make sense and also make it compelling. I've spent probably 10 years, the last 10 years, researching, reading, watching anything and everything that deals with the ecology or environment, environmental science. What I began to formulate 4 years ago in the production of the film was, people who have been interviewed by other authors and or subjects I thought were interesting. Like there's a book called The Sixth Extinction, and it was by Elizabeth Colbert. And in there, she talks about the acidification of our oceans, and that she went diving with this marine biologist over in Italy. And so I emailed and connected with the marine biologist. He said, you have to come to Japan, because we have a conclave of scientists from around the world there gathering this week that we're going to be, that, we want you to come there to film what we're doing, because this is an existential crisis that's happening to the oceans, let alone all the other, pressures that are on the ocean from just our human impact of overfishing them. So I guess those are some of the ways that we found them. As a lot of it's through just periodicals and reading and following up, and establishing sort of the general framework of the film, which was to help people understand this is not just a symptom of climate change. There are multiple symptoms. So we tried to address a number of those symptoms, then bring it together, as you said, with solutions.
Well, it's really well done and really well shot. As they say, if the oceans go, we go. I live on the Pacific Ocean. I can see it from right now. If it wasn't foggy, I could see it. But, and I know that, again, you see so many different films out there about the crisis that's going on with our oceans, with the plastic that's in the oceans, and the coral reefs going. And yet I don't know, hopefully we can stop it before it gets to even more of a crisis situation than it is now. We're recording this show today on Earth Day, the 51st anniversary of Earth Day. And what have we learned in a quarter of a century? It just sort of frustrates me when I think about, this is here we are a quarter of a century later, and how much have we really changed and grown in those 50 years? Did you get a sense of that? Have we made some progress? I mean, how much progress do you think we've made, or are we continuing to make it worse as human beings on the planet?
I think these problems, Jan, have sort of, I guess, evolved or grown gradually, probably since the sort of the dawn of the industrial revolution. It's where we discovered immense amounts of energy, as you know, as far as fossil energy, and it has allowed us as a society to explode across the globe to basically deliver food and water anywhere, and to deter almost any disease through the medicines that we've been able to, ingeniously create to extend our lives and to deter these diseases that come our way, like COVID, for example. And as a result, we've essentially exploded across the globe, and it's causing, a collective impact that is just, dramatic. And it's developed over that period of time, 150 plus years. And it'll take time to heal. We have to start to change that trajectory, and that's what this film is really about. It's discussing the conversation of the unsustainability of it, and to address both. Consumption is a concern, but it's very difficult to reduce that consumption. No one really wants to, and the film talks about that. So we have to also, put out on the table now, and we're at an emergency level, I think, as far as having this conversation, as far as trying to address our numbers. And it's an important aspect to discuss. And it's not an easy one, because it comes with a lot of emotional, let's just say minefields, from political issues to religious to cultural to economic. And they're all very valid concerns, but we do need to, forthrightly and honestly approach this subject.
I couldn't agree with the concept of controlling our population. I mean, that is something that I have been talking about for years and years and years and years too, that, there's just too many people on this planet, and how are we going to continue to sustain it? And yet, everybody I know who's, having children, it seems like 3 children's the magical number nowadays. Almost every family I'm aware of has 3 children. I mean, and again, how are we, and this is, we're in America, so we don't really think about what's going on in the rest of the world as much. Unfortunately, because we know we have clean water in most places, and we know we can get clean air in most places and whatnot. And yet, that's when we're putting our head in the sand, and we're not paying attention to what's going on in the rest of the world, because the rest of the world affects us as much as, more than we think. Let's put it that way, much more than we think. So in addressing, because it really is a very controversial topic to talk about controlling the population. So in doing that, how do you, I know one of the things that you talk about in the film, and I highly agree, is educating women. And why don't you talk a little bit further about why that's so important, and then how, and then the second part of the question is, how can we have this conversation? How can we get the word out and talk more about controlling our population?
It's interesting. I think the term control with regard to population is not a really favorable, I guess, a term that a lot of people like to use, because it does, conjure up or convey that your reproductive autonomy is at stake. And so I think a lot of these organizations have shied away from either calling it that or even addressing it. And what's interesting is it's amazing that when you, and this is what the film talks about, is when you have intentional campaigns and intentional cultures that address, enabling and empowering women to make their own decisions, to gain reproductive autonomy, get an education and improve their, health and living conditions for themselves and for their families. It actually behooves and benefits the environment, because when women are educated, when they're empowered, and when they have that reproductive autonomy, they tend to space their children more. They tend to have fewer children. They tend to have them later in life, and it's a win-win-win. It's a win for women's health and reproductive rights. It's a win for the environment, and it's just a win for sustainability and better lives for both human beings and for the animal world. So I think that's the way we look at it, and that's the way that a lot of governments have done it. There's obviously the negative history of population control, as you said, Jan, which was the famous one is obviously China, and India had a sterilization program, forced sterilization, and it's pretty well known that there are so many really good countries now that have very good population policies that are all in a human rights context, all voluntary, and it's doing incredible good for both people and planet.
And how did it work in China? I mean, did it really help? Because what is it, a one-child mandate that they have in China? Is that still the case, or have they relaxed that a little
they've
bit?
relaxed it, yes.
Yeah, I thought they had relaxed it.
What I have read is that they estimate that there may be upwards of almost 500 million fewer people in China today because of that policy. But I've also read that in many cases they could have done that just through what I was discussing, which is all in a voluntary way, all with human rights, all with just education and healthcare and providing access to modern day contraception. And we've seen that in many countries, and we even showed, as you saw, a number of examples that experts talked about in the film, like Iran and Ethiopia and the region and state in India called Kerala. All great examples of high human development indicators and a changing infertility just from providing those types of social justice and health justice expectations.
It's interesting that so many countries, I mean, again, it goes, the big major point of this is the educating women. And so many countries have been so against educating women. And that yet, if you educate, a woman, you're educating a family, and and then it spreads out and into the community, and how important this is. And so, enlarging that, I mean, I'm still sure that there are communities, places throughout the world that still don't believe in educating women as much as they should be. And I found that interesting that has changed things by educating these women and women, and also learning more about family planning and reproductive, the reproduction rights. It's also, it's the poorer countries that seem to have more children. Now, why do you think that is? It's just that they're just not aware as much?
I think it comes down to when you find countries that prioritize education and they prioritize healthcare. Again, girls and young girls, they don't get married at 15 or 16. They are much more financially independent when they're educated. They are in the workforce. They delay marriage. They delay having children, and they're in control of their reproductive capabilities. So they tend to have fewer children, and you see that in the developed world. And unfortunately, a lot of those that framework or those even some would say rights don't exist in a lot of these developing countries. But there are a lot of countries that are improving, and they are trying to prioritize this because they do see the human health need, and they also see the environmental challenges that their countries are facing with uncontrolled and unsustainable population growth.
It's interesting. Last year I did an interview with a filmmaker, another documentary, and it was about women choosing not to have children. And that's kind of a controversial thing too, because you touch on it briefly in the film, in your film, about as soon as you get married or if you hit your 30s, it's all of a sudden oh, don't you want to have children? And why is it we feel this need that we must have children, but that we must reproduce? And some of my friends who did not have children, mostly because they perhaps could not have children, I'm not sure it was a conscious decision at that point, but they have the longest, strongest marriages too, I have found, than the ones who had lots of children.
Children are a stressor, Jan. Yes, they are. We love them, but they certainly wear us down.
Yes, they do. They age people.
But I think that it is interesting when faced with those choices, especially today. That we have a bioethicist that you saw in the film who talks about the morality of, knowing about the issues with climate change, knowing about the trajectory that we're on, ecologically, which is not a good trajectory for the planet currently. There are a lot of younger people who are choosing to have a smaller family or have no children, and I think once you know what's happening with the planet, as the bioethicist said, from a moral perspective, do you want to impose this planet on a child? And alternatively, do you want to impose a child on this planet? Because a child certainly born in a developed world like the United States is a far, far bigger consumer and polluter than a child that's born in a developing world economy.
Well, again, it is interesting. I mean, I think about my friends who are having babies now, and have young children. I'm thinking, I would not want to be raising a child in this environment. I don't know what we're leaving for them. I really, I can only hope that we're going to be leaving things better, or that these young people that are being born now can help and continue with the solutions that we need to continue to save this planet. I mean, and thank goodness we have a president that is who understands this, understands these issues, and certainly is putting forth a more progressive agenda on climate change and all the things we need to do. It's not just that; that's one part of it. It's many things. One of the things that
Yeah.
there's so many things in your film, but and I've seen a lot. I just did an interview recently, another documentary. It was about Antarctica and what's going on up there. But your film doesn't touch Antarctica, but you touch on so many other things. What was for you? Was there something in this when you were filming this movie that was just eye opening, that you had no idea, that just kind of rocked you because you just learned something new that you had no idea about?
Well, I came to the film with a deep concern for the natural world, and so that was my I guess my approach to the film was, I was raised by a father who really loved nature, and we spent a lot of time in it. And what I found, which was astonishing when we were making this film, was the human impact from unsustainable population growth, the human health challenges from people who are dying daily from water pollution, or from that's caused by that causes gastrointestinal diseases, and air pollution, as you saw with India, and the thousands of people who are dying over there because of air pollution, that from just so many people burning wood to keep warm, or to make some a meal. And you see it with the agricultural system, where we are just stripping it of its nutrition. All the soils there and their fertility are essentially wiped out, and that comes downstream to what we eat. And we're not eating the most nutritious plant materials anymore, because it's been just gone. It's been it's disappeared. And I look at what's happening with the fishing practices, and we've essentially denuded the oceans of all fish, and 90% of fish are either overfished or fished to capacity, or those fisheries are in outright collapse. So and there are people who depend on that for their nutrition, and billions of people on a daily basis. And these are people who, that's their only source of nutrition. So, and I see, like, for example, in high housing costs, where, especially in this country, some areas like even California, where, the cost of housing becomes so great that people have to sacrifice in other parts of their incomes. Then it may be that they have a lesser nutritious diet because they want to keep a roof over their head. So the human health cost, to me, was a dramatic revelation.
Yes, yeah. It's interesting. I've been a pescatarian most of my life, slash sometimes vegan, vegetarian. And when I watched this, I went, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't be eating fish anymore. Maybe I have to, take that out of my diet. Not that I eat an abundance of it, but it was just eye opening. I was like, well, I'm one of those consumers who is, eating the fish, and that's why we, they're making money from it. That's the other thing.
And on a side note, you may want to review Seaspiracy. I just watched that documentary. It's a very good documentary on what we're doing to the oceans as far as overfishing them.
Oh, okay. I will definitely look into that Seaspiracy. All
Yeah.
right, I definitely will. One of the I love how you opened the film with Jane Goodall, and this quote from Mahatma Gandhi. This planet can provide for humans' needs, but not human greed. And I thought that was, I had to stop the film and write that quote down because it was so appropriate. How did you get Jane Goodall involved in this film?
That was a significant task to get that. It was actually a pre-recorded, um, I guess, thing that she did for another film that was not, I don't think it was used in the other film, but I had seen it, and I thought it was a wonderful introduction to the film, what she says.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of, established the film and did it in a way that was thoughtful and kind and with reverence for human life and the animal world at the same time. So I tried to get it through her foundation. Contact with her was very difficult. And then she came to Philadelphia, where I'm from, and spoke at the art museum. And I came up and introduced myself to her and told her I was doing this film and I really wanted to use that piece of the film that she had done there, and she had the rights, and we were able to get the rights to do that. She gave us permission.
No, it's a beautiful way to open the film. It truly is, And
Mm-hmm.
what was the most difficult part for you? I mean, in watching it, I mean, for me, one of the most difficult parts was India. But for you in filming it, what was the most difficult part?
Oh, it's an interesting road, Jan, and I'm sure for every filmmaker it's different. I don't know if there was one really overwhelming struggle we had, but there are struggles every day when you are trying to reach your goals, and you just have to persevere and move ahead. Whether it's financing the film, or whether it's getting the appropriate permits, or getting the right shots, or the editing, which is obviously a major task. There are hurdles all along the way, and obstacles, and the key thing is just to press on. And I think if you're persistent and determined and work really hard, you can create a really good outcome.
Well,
and I
that
think the film is like that.
that's the advice. Good advice for every every endeavor.
In life, yes, not just filmmaking.
Not just filmmaking. Exactly. Good advice right there. Did you have? How long did it take you to film this?
It was pretty quick for documentaries. I think we did it in about a total of 3 years from conception to final edit and final production. We were supposed to a year ago release the film. We had it all set for theaters, a theatrical release in North America, and that was back in May of last year. And COVID struck, so we had to postpone it, sit on the sidelines, look at the landscape, and see how it developed. And so we just released it. We actually release it theatrically tomorrow, Friday, April 23rd. I'm not sure when you're going to produce this film, this podcast or this radio show, but we had our world premiere this past Tuesday on April 20th. So it'll be in theaters for a few weeks virtually. So you can go to any theater essentially and support those theaters, which I like and I think is important.
Yes, definitely. I think I always say we should watch movies in the movie theater, and now that they're beginning to open, we can. Let's talk a little bit about the title, 8 Billion Angels. How did you come up with that title? We only have like a minute or so.
Yeah, that's fine. The inspiration is sort of twofold. I think we as humans have an enormous capacity for care, compassion, decency, and love. What I would term the better angels of our nature, Jan.
Mm-hmm.
But as our numbers quickly approach 8 billion, our collective actions, no matter how good or benign, are having massive and largely unintentional catastrophic consequences for us and every living creature. And we must find the moral courage to address this and address it thoughtfully and with compassion and with care.
Yes, we do. Well, everybody, I think that this will be out on VOD platforms, won't it? coming up?
Yes, it will. We're hoping probably by the summer it'll be out on a TVOD transactional. Yes.
Great. Well, everyone seek out 8 Billion Angels. I highly recommend it. It's well worth your time. It's beautifully done and eye-opening and inspiring. So thank you, Terry. I appreciate you being on the show. It's been a pleasure having you here, and I wish you much success with the film.
You're a lovely interviewer. Thank you.
Thank you. You can listen to The Jan Price Show whenever and wherever. If you've missed any of our shows, they are all archived on thejanpriceshow.com and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, the iHeart Podcast Network, Spotify, Google Play, etc. We're everywhere. And also you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Jan Price Show. Thank you for listening.